Drive. The guys are in their corners, ready to go on a Tuesday. It feels like a Monday. Glad you're with us on the Fan Sports Network. Your home for exclusive live streams and radio broadcasts of high school playoff basketball. We are going 3 wide on Wednesday. We're going to have Crimson, Desert Hills, and Pineview all live streamed for you on Wednesday. Radio coverage will start with Crimson. We'll get you in and out of some of the other games as the games get close and whatnot. Good morning, Ben. Good morning, Casey. How we doing, fellas? How was the President's Day weekend?
Really good.
Really good. Yeah.
Really good.
No soccer for me. So
Yeah. I was living in Mesquite this weekend. You guys have had time to break down the brackets. We've got a lot of bracket questions, kind of our edition of bracketology. CC's got the dinger. Paulie's keeping score. Here we go. Region 9 rivals. Let's start with this. Casey, you're up first. What Region 9 team, in your opinion, has the easiest path to win a title?
It's got to be the Dixie Flyers. When the bracket first came out, and you're looking at matchups and you're looking at potential paths, I think Dixie has it. One, they avoid Pineview. They avoid a potential matchup with Crimson Cliffs. They also are staying away from Green Canyon. They're staying away from Layton Christian until a potential championship. And when you look at what the Flyers might have, they might have a potential matchup with Snow Canyon, which the two region matchups this year really weren't close. So I don't think they're too worried about that. I think the one that could be a little bit scary is that semifinal matchup against Logan, potentially. Logan's got some size. They're physical. But I really think Dixie has a great route to get to the championship game. And it's going to be interesting to see who they match up with. I'm not convinced that it's going to be Layton Christian. I think there could be an upset on that top half of the bracket. But I do think the Flyers have the best route to win the 4A state championship next week.
Yeah, if it goes chalk, they would play Desert Hills, Snow Canyon, Logan, then Layton Christian. If it goes chalk with the lower seed winning. All right, Casey, off to a good start. Ben, who is the easiest path?
off to a good start. Dev, I couldn't disagree, and this can't surprise anybody. I couldn't disagree more with Mr. Winters. He must be on a little bit of vacation layover. I love the Flyers. I predicted, of course, early on that they would go undefeated, and
not before me though.
Well, it's because the loser guy gets to go first in our competition. But look, when you look at the bracket, I'm gonna counter his point first. They have to face off potentially against Desert Hills, who just lost closely to the Flyers. Then they square off against the Snow Canyon team that continues to play better. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. We all know that, and especially a team with Owen Mackey on there. And then they're facing off against Logan, who could have been ranked a little bit higher, but wins that region up in Cache Valley. That's your quarters, that's your semis, and you haven't even talked about getting to the championship against the other half of the bracket. But I actually think it's the Crimson Cliffs Mustangs. I think they've got a Hillcrest team that is a good matchup for them. When you talk about a guy like Sean Phelps, I think Hillcrest's biggest guy is 6'7" or 6'8", and then they've got a chance to match up with Ridgeline, who this is where the tournament becomes interesting because you haven't seen any of these Logan teams. I think Region 9 was underrated the entire year as evidence of Dixie getting a 2 seed versus the Layton Christian team that I saw early in the season. I just think Dixie was better. So I think it's Crimson because then you got a matchup against Pineview, then you got a potential matchup against Layton Christian, who they've seen as their first game of the season, and I think it was a 12-point game. Guy had 9 threes. I think Crimson could be sneaky in this bracket. You only got to win 5.
Hey, I love Crimson. I'm going to counter.
Oh, we get a counter
just for a minute.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were moving on to the next question.
I'm just saying, easiest path, but they lost to Ridgeline. They lost to Layton Christian. I love Crimson. I think they could get there.
You coached them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No love lost.
Absolutely. But, I mean, to go against the Flyers is bonkers.
In the championship.
You know, let's be honest. Everybody, you could argue, has an easier draw or a harder draw. You could go to Pineview. You could look at Desert Hills. You could look at Snow Canyon. And we're going to because the next question, guys. Ben, you are up first. Who has the toughest path in front of them if they want to get hot and win a state title?
I think it's Snow Canyon. I think they're going to win that first round matchup, and then in the quarters you're potentially facing Dixie. And then if somebody happens to be Dixie, you're squaring off against a team like Logan. I think we saw this in the football state championship RPI bracket, where it kind of felt like it kind of felt like the best teams got matched up a little earlier than we would have liked to have seen them. And I think this is evidence of that again here, where this RPI, for all the good things it does, for all the, the mud it tries to clean up, I think it provides some difficulty when you're only playing really 18 or 20 games in a season.
I look at a couple teams. One would be the one that Ben mentioned earlier, Desert Hills. I mean, they can get hot. We've seen them win 4 or 5 in a row in the region. I mean, you look at the path that they're going to have to take. Jordan, I think they'll get through that one. But then you have a Dixie. You have a potential Snow Canyon. Mount Crest has been playing well. And then you would have like a Logan or a Cottonwood. So Desert Hills for sure. But on that top half of the bracket, I really want to see a potential matchup between Crimson and Pineview. I mean, you would have a Cache Valley, Southern Utah matchup, with the Green Canyon Ridgeline. But if those two can meet, in that third round, that would be awesome.
9:30
yeah,
on a Monday morning.
Yeah, but then you run into a Layton Christian. So, I mean, on that top half, Ben mentioned Crimson Cliffs is having an easier route. I think that route for Pineview and Crimson both is doable, but I think it's going to be challenging every step of the way.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Pat Amico of Pineview, and I don't think he was too excited to see Ridgeline so early in the tournament if they can get to that game.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those teams played early on. I mean, you remember that they have that North-South challenge. So the good thing is you're not going in completely unfamiliar. You can look back on some tape, even though it was 2 or 3 months ago, and you can make some adjustments. And with the way that you can get film these days, I mean, coaches have already watched, a couple games for each of their opponents that they might face.
Good stuff. Casey and Ben, Region 9 Rivals continues here. Let's go to question number 3.
I won't take my potential counterpoint.
Oh, did I skip you? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. We threw in a
We're
wrinkle
throwing
today
the counterpoint.
where we can do counterpoints. I didn't. I'm going to pass that in a sign of.
Let me set this next question up. Layton Christian into their region at 9-1. Provo was 8-2. Cottonwood was 12-0. Murray was 10-2 in their region. Ridgeline was 8-2. Logan was 7-3. So the question becomes, what team outside of Region 9 has the best shot to win it all?
Man, for me, it's kind of the fear of the unknown. Like, obviously, we know the Region 9 teams really well. I feel like we're pretty familiar with the Cache Valley teams. But adding all these new teams into 4A this year, you don't know. And you feel like those regions are a little bit weaker, especially in the bottom half. So, Provo is going to be good. They're very well coached by Chris Collinsworth. Layton Christian, we saw them make a deep run into the tournament. They're proven that they're going to be, and there's a little drama outside of the basketball surrounding them. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But, Cottonwood, they have Chris Cox, who's a big-time player. I think you got to say, just based on what we see in the RPI and what we see in records, is Layton Christian. But I feel like, they're going to have some tough matchups with Crimson, Pineview, Ridgeline, Green Canyon. For them to get to the championship, it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight every step of the way. But I got to go with Layton Christian.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, like Casey said, we haven't really seen many of these teams. We saw some of them early, but it wasn't enough of evidence to really make a final verdict. But, when you look at teams like Cottonwood, Casey mentioned him as their big guy as well. He transfers in mid-season and, has several games with 30 points. They could be really difficult. I mean, Crimson beat them by 20, or that was the game actually that Scoop Johnson broke his foot at a late play, which I thought was kind of a dirty play towards the end of the game. The game was over, and the guy made a play at half court that just shouldn't have been made. But that Cottonwood team is totally different. And then I had the chance to see Layton Christian early in the season. If the guy that hit 9 threes for them hit 6, Crimson probably beats them on their home floor. And I'm going to go against Layton Christian on this one. I don't think they play as tough of a schedule. If you look at their strength of schedule, I don't think that they've got quite what it takes to win those 4 or 5 games that you really need to win. I'm going to go with a team that's probably been there and experienced in that setting. And also, we forget about this, they're going to probably travel a little bit better than Southern Utah will, and that's Ridgeline. I think Ridgeline has a chance if they can get past that Pineview team. I think that could be really interesting to see where they shape up. But I'm gonna put Ridgeline against a team like Layton Christian if it ends up those two matching up.
All right, Layton Christian for Kasey, Ridgeline for Ben. Rosevar 16, Cox averages 17 for Cottonwood, and then you got that Jagger Frankham, the big 6'11" kid for Ridgeline. He averages 15 a game. They got Carson Cox that's still there for Ridgeline. He's an 18-point scorer per game. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
I think that Ridgeline Pineview matchup is really going to be an interesting matchup because you're going to have the guard power of Pineview versus the size of Ridgeline, and that's kind of been disruptive for Pineview lately.
All right, moving on. We've got a few more. Plus, if there's a tiebreaker, we do have a bonus ball question if necessary. Paulie, do we need an update on the scoring? Paulie, let's see. The scoring right now.
No iPad today, huh, Paulie?
Oh, it's tied.
Oh, yeah, well,
17 to 17.
Look, this isn't a matchup. Casey's an experienced veteran. I don't expect to see a blowout in this type of situation. This is a couple of heavyweights.
Hey, I just want to know when we're going to start getting points for answering questions right.
All right, guys. We kind of touched on this a little bit. We're continuing to break down the bracket that came out Saturday morning, the 4A state basketball bracket. But I ask you a little different question here. What is the most difficult matchup for the Dixie Flyers that you foresee?
Ooh.
Ben, you go first.
I'm going to go that Snow Canyon matchup. I think that's going to be one where Snow Canyon has neutral court. It's going to be an early morning game. You got it's a tougher gym. You go from a high school gym when you talk about that depth perception of having a wall behind or a closer student section behind to this big open arena. It's a Division I arena. And I think that's going to be an interesting game. I don't think generally at those early morning games and shooting on a college facility, I think you see a little bit lower three-point shooting. I think it's even a bigger court. So I think you're going to see some interesting things happen in that game. I think it's going to be a close one, and I think anytime Owen Mackey steps on the court, I think anything can happen. It's going to be the supporting cast that determines that game. You're going to get Kyle Lemke. You're going to get Jordan Roberts. It's going to be the supporting cast that'll win that game for Snow Canyon or Dixie. Dixie
beat Snow Canyon 70-54 in the first meeting, and that was at the hangar the first meeting. Then over at Snow Canyon, it was 77-59. Owen Mackey had big games in both of them, but that was it. There wasn't enough of a secondary in the third.
Well,
Dixie
came out in that third quarter, and they're a good third quarter team. Tyler Roberts makes great adjustments at halftime.
It was 32-30 in the second game.
And they've done that in most of their games, including Crimson games and so forth, where even the Desert Hills games, that was back and forth a little bit. But he makes great third quarter adjustments and second half adjustments.
All right, Kasey.
I think it could potentially be this Friday against Desert Hills. It's going to be at the hangar. Coach Allred and Coach Holbrook did a great job going to a little bit of a zone, kind of getting Dixie out of their rhythm. Didn't allow Kyle just to go to work, and it took Dixie. It was senior night. There were a few other things, going on, but it really did take Dixie a minute to adjust to what Desert Hills was doing. Eli Allred went off for 30. He's been very tough to handle lately. So, Friday night, the emotion's going to be high at the hangar if Desert Hills can get past that first one. So it could be an early, second round matchup that could be the toughest. And maybe just a backup to that would be that Logan matchup. I think, Logan has some size. They have the physicality. And they haven't played each other, right? So you don't know going into that matchup what Coach Argyle is going to do up at Logan. Is he going to zone? Is he going to man? What's he going to do, to try to get past the Flyers?
Good stuff. All right, going on to question number 5. Which team between Desert Hills, Snow Canyon, and Pineview or Crimson, everybody but Dixie, that's playing in the state tournament? I'm not throwing Hurricane into this equation for this run, but make an argument on who will make the deepest run and why. Kasey, you're up first.
Oh, man. It's hard to bet against Owen Mackey. We know that he can, put a team on his back and make a deep run. But I do think the deepest run is going to come from that potential Crimson Cliffs Pineview matchup. It's going to be Scoop and Sean versus Griff and Nash. And it's going to come down, to, those guys being able to make adjustments after just playing a couple weeks ago on a neutral court. and seeing who can prevail there. I'm split 50. I mean, that's a weak answer on my part, but like for me to look,
You said it.
but for me to look and pick Crimson or Pineview right now, I mean, those two played as even as you could during the season. I really think that could be a last possession game winner type game, to move on in the tournament.
Yeah, you finish top 5 in state if you win that game at least. Yeah, Ben, go.
So as opposed to giving a couple of teams, I thought you wanted one, right? I'm going to go all in on the Crimson Cliffs Mustangs. Look, we haven't even talked about this. A little bit of a surprise. We got Scoop Johnson back.
Last 3 games, yep.
He's back. He's in a rhythm. 2 or 3 weeks of practice. You got the big fella Sean Feltz. I think, yes, that Pineview game, again, a lot's got to go right for those two to match up on a Monday morning at Utah Valley. But if it does go right and those two teams square off, I really like Crimson's path, even all the way to the championship. Again, you got those two guys. You got a neutral court that Monday morning. And I think as much as Pineview feels like they were robbed of those 2 wins, that both came down to the final minutes, I think Crimson realizes, like, there's no love lost between those 2 teams. I think both of those teams will look forward to that matchup. And again, I don't think that it's as easy as people think to just go from a high school gym to a Division I gym, unless you're playing, all of your season in those types of gyms. The depth perception. We see this in the Final Four, where literally you're playing in a football stadium and the hoop is it looks like it's sitting on the moon. And it's so the reason I bring that up is you look at a team like Pineview that relies so much on the 3-point shooting and the slashing and scoring of those 2 guys versus Crimson, who just has not shot the 3-point well all season. In that win against Pineview, the last region game for Crimson, they made 2 threes.
Right.
So they don't really need the 3-pointer to get up to the 60 and 70 points. They can do it with the big fella inside. They do it in the foul line. And so I really like that path for Crimson. No path is easy in this, but I think theirs has the most potential.
All right, final question. Who wins the state tournament, and who is the MVP? Ben, you're up first.
Oh, well, this is a little bit of a disadvantage for Casey going first because I still think it's going to be the Dixie Flyers. I think this has just been a magical ride, barring some kind of freak injury or some kind of bizarre foul trouble, which they've managed all season. I think the Flyers have put their resume together. This is a team they've built from childhood up, really. And you'd love to see, Coach Tyler Roberts. He's been in a couple of close ones the last couple of years, and you'd love to see him actually get that second.
Yeah, they've lost 2 state championships in a row the last 2 years, and they don't get the number 1 overall seed. So, Casey, who wins it, and who's the MVP, Ben?
And I think it's going to be Kyle Lemke.
Okay, Casey?
Dixie Flyers. I think they're going to put a cap on this historic season. Not only individually for a few of their players reaching milestones, and Jordan Roberts, making all sorts of records, historically in the state. But I think they're even in the conversation for, are they one of the best teams in Region 9 ever, with what they've done this season. To be in that conversation, you have to win the state championship. And I think they're going to get it done. I think they're going to make the adjustments. I think the chemistry they have is going to set them apart from some of the other teams. And I think the MVP is going to be Jordan Roberts. I think some of these teams are going to come out and try to stop Kyle Lemke. They're going to zone, they're going to double, they're going to front. And I think it's going to be up to Jordan to make those adjustments as the point guard, maybe put on more of that scoring role like we've seen him do several times this season. And I think those adjustments, right, still keeping Kyle involved, maybe getting some other guys involved, and then scoring more himself. I think we'll see the Flyers as the champions. Jordan Roberts is the MVP.
All right, good stuff. Paulie's tallying up the final votes. Here we go, and it's going to be fun. Dixie would have to go through, of course, essentially Desert Hills, then Snow Canyon early on, then maybe a team like Logan, and then we'll see who comes out of the other half of that bracket. If it goes chalk, Layton Christian would be a 1-2 matchup. All right, Casey 33, Ben 31. Epic showdown again on Region 9 rivals. Casey was trailing 3-1 on the season tally, so he's closed the gap in the best-of-7 series to 3-2.
LeBron, versus the Warriors. It's happening. It's happening. Today was the first step.
Yeah. Hey, look. we got a notepad over there with prison marks on it. I mean, he's tallying it up like he's counting his days till he's released. I don't. I mean, unless
Ben wasn't complaining about the tallies when he was winning.
No,
when we get the iPad back,
I mean,
let's get the iPad back so we can actually have some documented scoring. I mean, I don't know. It looked like maybe the scoring mechanism was the issue today. But hats off to Kasey. I mean, I know a lot of people asked me and text me and posted, would he ever get that second victory this season? And so I'm happy for him and Team Winters.
It's going to be exciting state tournament, guys. There's going to be some upsets. There's definitely going to be some twists and turns. It'll be fun to see who's the all-tournament team, ultimately who wins the state title. And again, 3 wide on Wednesday night right here on the Fan Sports Network. We got the home game of Crimson, the home game of Pineview, and that home game for Desert Hills.
Are we gonna have the A team together? We're gonna have Dixon Lindquist Winters at that Wednesday night game?
We can make that happen.
Okay.
We can make that happen. Absolutely. We can make that happen. I know Paulie CC are going to be over at Pineview. I know Caden will be anchoring our coverage at Desert Hills.
Wow.
We're going to be everywhere. And we could be 3 wide on Friday night. We're guaranteed at least the 2 games because we know Dixie and Snowcan will be hosting Friday night. And we know at least one of those will be an inter-region showdown. So it's going to be a busy week for us here on the Fan Sports Network. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks to our great show sponsors. Ben Kasey, great job as always. We'll see you guys in the broadcast booth on Wednesday night. We'll get you back to your CBS programming. Stick around this afternoon for From the Bleachers.